Hello folks, and welcome to our Learn with the Nerds model-driven apps and Dataverse session. Thank you so much for joining us here today. My name is Matt Peterson. Maybe you've seen me on our YouTube channel before, and if you're new to the YouTube channel, make sure to subscribe to it. We got lots of free great resources for you out there to learn from. My former background is I was a math teacher for 16 years, 7th and 8th grade students. I love doing it, but now I'm here at Pragmatic Works, where I've been for over 5 years now. And everything I'm going to teach you today is things that I've learned here from our Pragmatic Works company. So what are we doing today? Well, we're going to be making a model-driven application and utilizing Dataverse. Now, before we can just get right into it, there are a few things that we need to kind of install and make sure that you have the appropriate environment to follow along. Now, one question I'm sure you're going to ask is, hey, is this session being recorded? It is being recorded. So at any point, you can always pause me during this live session, but you can also go back and rewatch this video anytime you want to. So if you want to build along with me live here today, great. If you're like, I just want to sit back and watch it done for the first time and then come back and rewatch and then build with you, that is also fine as well. So what we're going to start off with is, what are we building? Well, I'm going to tell you that in just a few moments, but we got to set up some requirements here. So for those of you that want to follow along, if you want to go and open up a web browser, Edge or Chrome would be the browsers of choice that I would go with, and go out to make.powerapps.com. Again, that is make.powerapps.com, and we'll be helping out in the chat as well. So you can see here that I'm logged into make.powerapps.com. And when you work in the Power Platform, excluding Power BI, you always work inside of an environment. Now, if you go to the upper right-hand corner and you click on an environment, you'll notice that some of them are categorized as build apps with Dataverse environments. Now, that's going to be a key thing, because in order to build a model-driven app, you have to have an environment that has Dataverse capabilities. And that's what's beautiful about model-driven apps, because since we're building it off the backbone of Dataverse, the application that we build, we don't have to write any formulas. I'll say that again. So for those of you who built Canvas apps in the past, so you've written PowerFX code, in a model-driven app, you don't have to write any formulas. And we're not going to touch or write a single formula today. Now, can you write formulas? You definitely can, but we're not going to be writing any formulas for our model-driven app today. So in the upper right-hand corner, if you click on environment, you're going to see lots of different environments. Some are going to be more restrictive than others. That's all due to your company restrictions, which unfortunately we can't troubleshoot during this section. But what I do want you to search for at the top here is I want you to search for your name. Because if you have an environment that has your first and last name, or it might be your last name, then your first name, you have what is called a free developer plan from Microsoft. Again, keyword is free. It is a playground for you to utilize Dataverse, to use premium features, but it's just not meant for production purposes. So what I want you to know is, if you don't have this environment, I'm going to give you a quick way to try to sign up for it. Keyword is try to sign up for it. Some organizations don't let you do it, but I still want to let you know about it because I'm sure it's going to help out at least one person in our session today. So in the chat, we'll be putting in this link as well. You'll also see it in the description underneath, along with your course files. But if you go to this website and you click on Start Free, and then you just go in and put in your company or school email account, and then you just put a check right here, and then you're going to click on Start Free. And some of you are going to get a warning that says cannot complete the request. And that just means you can't make this nice free environment. For those of you who don't, it's going to take a few minutes before that environment is created for you. So again, if it didn't work for you, that is a-okay. But if it did, that's awesome. And we just have to wait sometimes it's 15 seconds, sometimes it's a minute, 3-4 minutes, depends on how busy the day is. But I just wanted to show you that because now you can use the other Power Platform products in order to continue your learning. Now, for the rest of you who weren't able to sign up for it, maybe you want to make your own special environment to work in today, because the environment is just a place to go and do some work. So if you want to make your own environment, if you have the privileges and the rights to do it, you can click on Settings up here in the upper right-hand corner, and then go to your Admin Center. And then once in the Admin Center, and again, it might work for some of you. It's all due to the privileges that your company has given you as the employee. So again, if you can't make it, we can't kind of help you out in the chat, and we apologize for that. But for those of you who can, if you click on environments over here on the left, and if you go up to the top left and click on new, you can come up with a name for your environment. So maybe like Learn with the Nerds Learning, something along those lines. For your choose a group, we're going to say no group necessary here. And then when you come down to the type, if you want, there's a few different types. We can't get into all of that for today. We've got a lot to do. But typically, a trial environment is what most people can sign up for. It does expire after, 30 to 60 days. And then here's the important part. No matter what type of environment you choose, you want to choose that you want to add a Dataverse store, because Dataverse is required in order to make a model-driven application. So once you make those changes there, you'll come on over down to the bottom and click on Next. Then you're going to choose the language. So I'm going to be in the United States, choose the currency, and then your security group, we're just going to go with none. This is just really saying like who can you add to the environment down the road if you ever wanted to. So I'm going to say I'm going to go with none. So I want to add, someone else from my team, Jonathan or Nate or Helen or whoever. I can add them down the road if I want to. And then the other part is I would deploy your sample apps and data, because we're going to use some of the sample data as part of our demonstration. And then you would turn that on, and then you would click Save. And then at that point, so I've already made an environment today. You can already see I made a Matt Learn with the Nerds environment here. So I'm not going to make another trial environment. So I'm just going to click Cancel on my side here. So that's going to get the environment working. So hopefully, at this point, you're able to get the developer environment, maybe make a trial environment as well that has Dataverse capabilities. And if you're not able to make environments with Dataverse capabilities, unfortunately, that means this is just going to be more of a show and tell and just to learn about model-driven applications. So I'm going to come up now, up to my environments. And again, for those of you who just made your developer or that new one, it might take a few moments. You might want to pause me at this point in order for that environment to get created. You might need to reload your browser, every 5-10 seconds or so. And once it finally does reload, so I'll come up here. I'm going to go to the environment that I'm going to work in today. So mine is going to be my Matt Learn with the Nerds right here. And then we're going to move on to our next steps. So again, I know it's not fun. Like, when do we make the model-driven app? We're going to get there, but this takes a little bit of time. So as some of us might be waiting on the environment to get created, let me show you what a model-driven app even looks like and kind of where we're going to be going with this whole situation. So I'm going to pull up here a little preview. This is not going to be the completed version of our application, but this is a model-driven app. So they look different than Canvas apps. Canvas apps, you have a lot of that design freedom. You put in your buttons, you do your coloring, PowerFX formulas. The beauty of a model-driven app is it's going to kind of create it for you out of the box here. So the scenario that we're going to have for today is I want to have some fun. I love music. I'm a huge music fan, love to go to concerts. And so I was like, all right, well, let's say we're going to put on our imaginary caps here that we are a company that we go out and find talent. And we found these artists that we want to do making some albums for us, right? And we know that when you make an album, you got to have someone that's a good producer, makes the person sound good. They do the editing, the sound mixing, all of that stuff. So we are going to shop out to other record labels of, hey, can you come in and work with our artist? How much is that going to cost us? What is the timeline that you've got for that? And we're going to get these different proposals that come in for our artists. And then we're going to choose, well, which company do we want to end up going with? So in our model-driven app, we're going to have a few different tables that we'll be creating/importing. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But we're going to have things like, the album that we want done and the proposals that are going to come from the different companies that said, hey, we can work with that artist. It's going to cost you $80 an hour or whatever the case might be. So as you can see, a model-driven app, for those of you who've only worked with Canvas apps, looks a little bit different from not a little bit, it looks a lot different from a Canvas application. So that's kind of where we're going to be going. Again, this is not the finished app. but just kind of a starting piece that we'll be beginning with. So I'm going to come up here, close out of this for the time being. And now, hopefully, your environment has been made. And again, if it hasn't, just feel free to pause me at this point or just keep watching. And the next thing that we're going to do is in that environment that you're going to choose to work with today is we're going to come over to the tables option on the left-hand side. This is our navigation panel. And what I want you to do is click on account at the very top. And you might have to search for it in the upper right-hand corner as well. And when we click on account, what I'm trying to have you check for is, do you have some sample data? Some of you might be working in your official environments that have real account records. I don't want us to really mess with those today. So if you have any that say the word sample at the end, great. If you don't, then an easy way to get sample data in your environment is if you come up to the upper right-hand corner, click on settings, and then you go to your advanced settings option. This is going to open up a new tab for you. And then in the upper part of your screen, once the web page does load up, there's going to be a settings drop down. And you're going to click, excuse me, you're going to click on that drop down area right up here at the top. And then you're going to come on down and you're going to click on data management. So I'm going to click on data management here. And this is just if you don't have sample data, which I just love to have. We're going to click on sample data here. And for those of you who don't have it, you're going to see a blue button that says install sample data. And you're just going to click on it. And by the time we need it, it should be installed inside of your environment. Now, for those of you who already have it, it's going to say remove sample data, which I don't want to do. So I'm good. But you're going to click install sample data for those of you who see that. And then you're going to get a little notification that says installing sample data. Feel free to close the window. So you can close out of that window. And then you can also close out of this tab as well. Now, part of today's class is, we can't make all the tables together because that would take up a lot of our time. So what I have done is I have made a pre-built starting area, but we don't call it a starting area. In terms of the Power Platform, we call this a solution. And what a solution is, it really serves two purposes. It helps you organize your work, and it helps you allow you to move your work from one environment over to another. So in your course files that you downloaded, which will be in the description below again, if not, let us know in the chat. We can give you that link to it. We're going to install a pre-created solution that's going to have the majority of our tables that we need. It's going to have a starting application, and then we're going to add on to it. All right. So what I'm going to do at this point now is I need to get my pre-created work inside. So I'm going to come over here to my left-hand navigation panel, and I'm going to click on Solutions. So the solution that we want, again, you have downloaded, hopefully at this point, and we're going to come up to the top left, and we're going to click on Import Solution. And once we click on Import Solution, we now need to go find that file that you have downloaded. So I'm going to click on Browse here, and I have put mine in my Downloads area. It's going to be called your Learn with the Nerd Model-Driven Apps and Dataverse Solution. And once you find that file, wherever you downloaded it from, we're going to click on it, and then we're going to click down here to say Open. And then once we have it pointed to the correct one, we're going to click on Next. It's now going to say, basically, here are some of the naming conventions that are being used, the version number, is it unmanaged? We have it as unmanaged so that you can mess with this all you want to. It's like the Wild Wild West. So the name is Learn with the Nerds, or LWTN. And then right down at the bottom, you're going to click on Import. And this is going to take a few moments for the import to do its process. It's bringing everything in, tables, the application that I've already pre-built for us that we're going to go in and modify. And so we're just going to have to wait here just for a few moments for the import to happen. Now, this could take just a few seconds. It could take a few moments here. So everything that we are learning here today, just wanted to let you know, this is just a shorter session. But if you enjoyed the training that you received here today and the explanations that you were getting, we have lots of videos that go into all of Power Apps, a full 8-hour course that is just model-driven applications only. We have live trainings on model-driven apps as well. And if you take a look at our YouTube channel, we have a whole bunch of series on applications too. One of the ones I've been currently working on is called Power Apps 101, just so you just start start to learn the basics of how to create applications and how they are used. So just letting you know, we got some resources out there. Feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. So hopefully here in just a few moments or seconds, hopefully it's seconds, our solution will now be imported, and then we can start to use that solution. All right, so the solution finally imported. If you're still waiting on yours, again, feel free to pause the video and wait for it to catch up. So once this solution has now been imported, we're going to click on it, and you're going to see all the pre-created stuff that came with the solution. And if you don't like this little notification up here at the top, you can always come up to the top, just click away so that you don't see it. Now for this solution, you can see that I've already added some tables inside of here. These are the things that we will be using. So as I mentioned, we have an idea of, we've got an artist that we are trying to nurture and to make an album for us. And we need some producers to come in and help with the recording. So one of the tables that I have, I'm gonna come over here to the left-hand side and click on my album table. And from here, I know there's a lot going on. Don't worry about all the extra stuff. Some things you go into when you get more advanced, other things you go into all the time. One of the things we go into a lot of the time is we go to the columns area. So I'm gonna click on my columns area. This will give us all the columns that have already been created for this table. And there's a lot here. Some come with the table when you create in Dataverse. The others are the ones that you make on your own. So a nice little cheat here is if you go to this name area and you hit the drop down and you go to the filter by, you can put in what we call our publisher prefix, which I put inside of our solution. It's a way to identify everything that you create inside of a solution. So what I put in here is I put in a prefix of Prague. So I'm going to put in my prefix of Prague and hit apply here. And this is going to give you an overview. These are the columns that I've given you. So you can see that we're going to put in the name of the album. We're going to put in what's our release date that we want the album to be done by, and who is the artist going to be recording that album. So that is our current album table, just to give you a little overview. Now, if I come on over to the left-hand side and I want to go look at the album proposal table, which I'm going to click on right here, and I go back to the columns area. So I'm on my album proposal columns, because I always like to give you an overview of what the data looks like before we just start using, the data. And I'm going to put that same little prefix in here as well. And I'm going to filter with that nice publisher prefix. It's our kind of the identifier of our column names. And I'm going to hit apply here. And we can see that I'm going to log some different things, like what are the credentials of the person that's going to be the producer? What's their hourly fee? Who is the producer themselves? What's the status? Have we approved it, rejected it, so on? And what record label is this coming from? Now, these are all different types of data types when we make columns, and I'll explain more of that as we move throughout. You might be going, well, I've never made a Dataverse table. I've never add columns. Are we going to be able to do that today? Yes, we're going to modify some of these tables as we move throughout the session. But that's the big idea, so that way you know what the columns are that we're going to be focusing on. Now, what I've also given you inside of your solution is the starting application. So if you come on over to the left-hand side of your solution and you click on apps, you'll see the Learn with the Nerds album processing app. And what I want you to do is just put a nice little check mark next to it. And then once you put a check mark next to it, we want to hit play. But you'll notice that we cannot hit play at this point. And the reason being is we haven't published the application. So you know what? Let's get that done at this point. So instead of hitting play here, what we can do is we're going to click on the name of the application. So I'm going to click on it right here. Now what this is opening up, this is the model-driven app designer. So this is the app that I've created for you, but now we're in design mode. But we just want to see what comes pre-built. So all I've done up until this point for the solution that you've downloaded is I've just added in the 4 tables that I want us to be able to use, and I put them inside of the application. I haven't made any more modifications. This is here's what you get pre-baked with a model-driven app. You say, hey, here are my tables, bring them into the app, which I've already done for us. You're like, well, how did you even bring these tables into the app? Well, how I did that is when you make a new model-driven application, you have this new button in the upper left-hand corner. And so what I did before this session is I clicked on new and I clicked on Dataverse table. and then I chose the tables that I wanted to add to the application. So we're not going to be adding more tables to it, but it's simply scrolling through and finding the tables that you want, or you can even click the search. If I wanted to say I wanted my album table, which I already have, I can search for it. I can click it just like so, and then I can say I want to add it. But because we already have it in the application, no need to re-add it here. So I'm going to hit cancel. But those are just quick steps of how you add your data that you want your app to talk to, how you add it into the application. But now what we're going to do is we're going to come up to the upper right-hand corner of the model-driven app designer, and we are going to save and publish. So what this is going to do is make the application now live, so we can officially play the application. Now this normally takes about 5 to 10 seconds or so we're going to let it go through its whole thing. And then once it does, I'm going to hit play, and we're going to be able to see what is actually going on with the application. So I'm going to hit play here, like so. And this is the model-driven app that I just showed you a little bit earlier in our session. And you can see that the tables that we've added, we can see them over here on our left-hand navigation side. So let's do this. Let's come on over to the albums area. And let's just see, okay, well, we don't see any data yet. We're not supposed to. Let's make a quick little record here, right? So up here at the top, and this is what's beautiful about model-driven apps, all the functionality is already here. So when I hit on new, and I go, I'm ready for a new album, we'll give it an album name. We'll call it the greatest album of all time. Again, you can call it whatever you want to, but you're like, Matt, weren't there other columns on that album table? Why don't I see them in your form? It's a great question. That's because when you make a table, Dataverse makes the form for you, and it always comes with two columns. The owner column, which we'll use for security later, and your primary name column. Now, the primary name column on a Dataverse table is basically the logical way that someone would refer to the record if they were calling you up on the phone. So I called mine album name, but we know that there's more information we want to add to this, and we will, I promise you. But for the time being, if I just come up here and click on save, you will see that on the albums page, in just a second, after I hit save, if I hit this back arrow, or I can hit save and close, either way, I'll now be able to see that data. But in an app, you're probably going to want to see more columns of data. You're going to want to enter in more information about the record in question itself. And those are the things that we'll be learning about. So now we have hey, congratulations. If you've never made a record in Dataverse with a model-driven app, technically, you now have done it at this point. Same thing with album proposals. If I went to the album proposals, we don't have any. I could go to make a new one, but I'm not going to make one right now because I want to link this proposal to which album is this for. Is it for the greatest album of all time? Is it for the worst album of all time? So on and so forth. So what we're going to move into next, we've now seen what comes pre-baked with your model-driven application. Now we want to go and start making modifications to it. So that's what's coming up next here. All right, so let's make some modifications here. So obviously we want to make our form a little bit better, more information. We want to make our views better as well. And you know what? What if we make a table and we want to modify that table? We want to add another column in question that we've come up with. So what we're going to do to start with is we're going to come back to our first tab that has the model-driven app designer open. And we're going to come up to the top and we're going to hit back. So that way we can go back inside of our solution. Because you know what? There's one other thing that I want to add to my album table, which is what genre, is this for? So as people are shopping this out, they go, hey, we're good with country artists, folk artists, hip hop, rap, whatever the case might be. So in our solution, we're going to come on down and expand our tables and click on album. So we've got our album. And what we're going to do is we're going to add in a new column. So in the upper left-hand corner, we're going to click on new, and then we're going to click on column. And then from here, I want this, and this is how you add columns to a Dataverse table. Just clicking new, saying I want to add a new column. And I'm going to call this the genre column. Now you'll notice with Dataverse, lots of different data types to choose from. And we'll explain my data types that I've given you already once we start making the rest of the app. But what we're going to do for this is we're going to go with the choice column because there's only going to be a certain amount of choices to pick from. So we're just going to make our own choice list here, very SharePoint listy feel. So I'm going to click on choice at this point. And then as I scroll down, we're going to click on no. What a global choice means is that if you make a choice list, you can use it for other tables inside of your environment. This one, I just want to make it just for this column only. So I'm going to click on no here. And again, we get into all the more specifics and advanced details of these in our other courses, but we're going to click on no. And let's just go with, I think I said folk. I'll add a new choice here. Maybe we will go country. We'll go, I don't know, pop, and we'll put in just one more. Do you have to add all of these in? No, you don't have to. And I'll put in here hip hop. All right, I don't even know if that's correct. Hip hop. I don't know. Pick whatever you want to here. Now, we could also put in a default choice if we wanted. That means whenever we make the record, it's automatically going to default to what we pick. But I'm going to go with none here. And then so I'm going to click on save. So now we've added a brand new column to our table. And again, that's going to be on the table, pun intended, for us to use inside of our application. Now, let's go modify what we see in the app. Because in our application, what we are looking at, this is what we call a view. And then when we click on new, this is what we call the form. So what I want to do is for my album and album proposals, I want to change the view. I want to change the form. Now there's a few ways of doing it, but since we're already in the solution, we're going to do it from here. Now you could technically do this from the model-driven app designer as well. But since we're already here, let's come on over and let's modify our album view and form and our album proposal view and form as well. So over on the left-hand side, let's click on the album in our objects panel. And we're going to come over into this data experiences window, and we're going to start off with the easy part, the views. So I'm going to click on views here. Now, lots of views get pre-created for you. They all, serve their own purposes and, things that they're supposed to do. But the typical one that you will modify right out of the box is your active view. So I'm going to click on my active albums view. Now, the reason they call it the active view is there's already a filter in place. It only shows records that are active. Now, you can modify that down the road. You can always add more filters over here on the right. So if you click on Edit Filters, you can see that you can add in more rows to filter over. But right now, it says I'm going to use the status column that equals active. Because when you make a Dataverse table, it automatically comes with a status column. And this allows you to basically soft delete. So you can take a record and activate it, which it is by default, or you can make it inactive, which turns it to not active, but inactive. So for our active view, we want to keep them as active. So I'm not going to mess with this filter here, but that's where you would go to change your filters. You can also come up here and change the sort order if you wanted to as well. Now here's the pre-created view that comes built out of the box. So it's going to automatically have when was this record created on. So I'm going to remove my created on here. So I just hit that drop down. I'm just going to remove it. Keep it there if you want to. You don't have to. Now from here, I want to add in all of my extra custom columns that I created within this solution. So over on the right, when you're ready to add columns in, you click this little filter icon. This is just a little trick here. If you just want to see your custom columns, click on custom. And now you just see the custom columns. So you don't have to search through and find everything. And then you just click them. So I'm going to click everything here. Just 3 simple clicks. If you don't like the order that they're in, you can just move them. So if I want the genre to be first, I can move it over. If I want the recording artist to be after the album name, I can move it on over. So now I've got the album name, the artist, release date, genre. I'm fine with that. And so what we're going to do next is up in the upper right hand corner, we're just going to hit save and publish. So we've now made the view. So what that's going to do is in the model driven application, it's going to update that view for us. You're like going, are you sure that it's going to do it? Well, there's a really easy way to test it out. So after the save and publish is done, I can come back to my second tab up here that had the application open. If I do a refresh, at this point, and I go to albums, there we go. Recording artists, release date, genre, and so on. All right, so now that this view is done, now let's go modify its form. So I'm going to come right back on over to our solution because we've seen that the view is done. We've already saved and published. So we're just going to hit our back arrow in the upper left-hand corner here. And what we can do to go to the form, we have a few different ways, but what's nice is if you just click on the drop down here and you go to forms, you can get everything. Now, if you don't want to do it that way, technically you can go back to tables, you could click on album, and then you could come right on over and click on forms here. Takes you to the exact same location. So I'm going to click on forms, and again, they've already made some forms for us. What we want to do is modify the main form, the main entry area where we're trying to put this information into. So we're going to click on our information main form from here. And then what we want to do, we definitely want the album name, but we want to add in all of our other custom columns once again. So in the upper left-hand corner, we can hit this nice little filter, just like we did with the view. We can say, just show me my custom columns. So we're going to say, just show me the custom columns, and then we just click away. So the release date, the genre, the recording artist, and then you can drag and drop them in whatever order you want to. So maybe I want the recording artist to be after the album name. And then I want the release date to be after that. And then I want the owner to be after that, and so on. The order does not matter, whatever you think looks good. Now, one other little thing, and there's a lot of form modifications that we can do here. But for this one, for the owner, I kind of like the owner to be up here. So if I take this owner field with it being selected and I drag it up to the top into my header, and then once it's that purplish color, whatever we want to call it, and I drag and drop it, now I can see that the owner, and that's going to be who is creating, the record. Now, once I have that done, I'm going to hit save and publish. Now, we are going to do some extra form modifications as we move throughout the course, but this is how you just make your quick, easy, basic form for users to utilize. So we're going to give it a second here to do it, save and publish. And then once that's done, we could go back and we could re-preview the app again, but let's go fix our other table for its view and for its form, our album proposals. So it's been saved, it's been published. So this one will go a little bit quicker on. So I'm going to hit the back. I'm going to go over into my tables area, and then I'm going to go to the album proposal table. And once again, I'm going to come on over here to the right-hand side, click on my views. And once I have my views, we know, hopefully, that we want to modify that active view. So I'm going to click on my active album proposals, just like so. Again, to create it on, don't too much care about. Keep it if you want to, but if you don't, hit that drop down and hit remove, like so. And then to add in those custom columns, we're going to come on over to the left-hand side. We're going to click on that filter. And we're going to say, hey, just show me those custom columns. So I'm going to click on custom, and I'm just going to bring this in. Album. Now, album, what is that? You see that little magnifying glass next to it? That is called a lookup column. So this is going to relate down the road what proposal for which album. So proposal whatever, it is for this specific album that we are giving the proposal for. So they're going to link together. It's called a lookup column here. So I'm going to bring in the album. I'm going to bring in who is going to be the producer of that album. What is the record label that that producer is associated with? That's going to come to our contacts and accounts table. That was part of our solution, which we'll see. And what comes with every Dataverse environment, you always have a contacts and accounts table. I'm going to bring in the status and maybe what were their credentials that they had. Again, put them in whatever order you want. Just click, 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 click away. Oh, you know what? Definitely want to know what is that hourly fee. Now, I put hourly fee at the back, but if I wanted to see that a little bit earlier, maybe after the producer, I want to see how much are they going to charge us per hour. So put them in whatever order you want, and then we're going to hit save and publish. Now, again, you can pause me at any point. We're trying to fit in as much information as possible in this session. In our regular trainings, we go slower. We answer those questions as we need to, but trying to give you the most that you can get information-wise in this session here. So again, we hit our save and publish in the upper right-hand corner. And then once it saves and publishes, we're going to hit the back arrow in the upper left-hand corner from over here. So we'll give it a second. It's been saved and published. I wish that check mark just stayed there, but it doesn't. But we did do it. So we're going to hit the back arrow at this point. Now we've made our album proposal view. So now we need the form to be modified so we can put in these proposals that people are giving us. So this time I am going to do it from the drop down, and I'm going to click on forms for our album proposal table. And then from here, I'm going to find the main. Now you'll notice that my main this time is the second option. I think on the first one, it was my third option. There's no rhyme or reason behind it. Just make sure you find the one that says main, might be first, second, or third, and then you're going to click on that form itself called the information form. And you can always give this a better name if you wanted to. If you want to call it your album proposal form, whatever. I'm just going to keep it information for the time being. Now, before I add in all these other columns, proposal number, the way I set y'all's table up is that every proposal that comes in, I have it set to be auto-numbered. So when we make a record, it's going to be called proposal 1000. The next record that gets made, proposal 1002. It's just a nice, easy way. Again, this is your primary name column of, hey, Matt, I'm calling about proposal 1027. Oh, I can go and easily find that inside of my data. But the thing is, with proposal number right now, the user I can put in my own proposal number, but I want Dataverse to automatically do this for me. So what I'm going to do instead, because Dataverse is set to auto number it for us, because that's how I made the column, I'm going to come over to the right-hand side. I'm going to make this a read-only column. So it'll be there. They'll be able to see it, but they won't be able to change it. So I'm going to make it a read-only. Now, like I did with the album table, where I made that owner go to the header, I'm going to do the same thing here, just to make it a little bit prettier. I think the owner looks good in the upper right-hand corner. Now, moving forward, I want to add in all of my other custom columns to this form. So I'm going to come up to my filter icon because I just want to see those custom columns. So I'll hit that filter. I'll come down and click on custom, and then I'm just going to add them all in. Now you'll notice hourly fee base. Well, the hourly fee column that I put in this table, I made it a currency data type. So technically model-driven apps do support the ability in Dataverse as well to allow users to see currency in different currencies. So your base column is going to store it in your environment currency, but you can set it up to be, you know what, I have someone from Europe that's going to be the producer, and they want to type in their currency, 1,000 euros or pounds or whatever. But the base column is always going to convert that into the currency that you've set up for your environment. So we typically don't use the base columns inside of our forms and also inside of our views. So we're going to add everything in but the base. All right. Now, can you make it a multi-currency app? Definitely can. Things we do in our other courses, but not for today. So what I'm going to put in here is I'm going to say, you know, what album are they giving us the proposal for? What producer is going to be part of it? What record label is this coming from? We're going to put in maybe what the credentials are of that producer, the hourly fee, and what is the final status that we have for this. Now, again, I know I'm adding in some columns that you have not added yourself, so let's talk a little bit more about them. So for the album, this is going to be a lookup column. This is where we're going to say, hey, this album over here, that's what we're giving the proposal for. The producer, this is also a lookup column. This is going to look at our contacts table. The contacts table is to store individual contact records. So 10 people, 20 people, we can put as many people as we want to. So we're going to pick the person that is the producer. And then the record label is also another lookup column that's going to say, well, what company is this producer a part of? Are they, with best records ever company? Or I'm not very inventive here. You all can kind of figure that out by now. Are they with company A or company B? The credentials are going to be a text area where we can, type in they worked on such and such's record in the past. It was a Grammy Award winning record, whatever. Hourly fee we've talked about, that's going to be our currency. And then again, our proposal status is going to be a choice column where we say, is it submitted, under review, rejected, approved, and so on. So I'm going to come up to the top here and I'm going to click save and publish. So now we have made 2 modifications to the views. So we made a modification to the album proposal view. We made a modification to the album view. And we've also made 2 other modifications to our album proposal form as well as our album form. So without writing any code, we have now transformed what comes pre-baked when you make a model-driven application. So now what do we want to do next? Well, does it really work? All right, great question. So I'm going to hit save and publish again. I always get a little bit nervous because I was talking. I didn't see the check mark here that it was saved and published. Now don't worry about this name. If you're wondering, hey, it says name cannot be empty, it can be. The only time that this name really needs to be filled in is if you're going to start to incorporate like JavaScript with your model-driven apps, and then you're going to need that when you start writing code for it. But you can ignore this for the time being. So once I've got that done, I'm going to hit the back arrow up here. So I'm done with my view. I'm done with my form for the time being. We're going to go back and make some more modifications, and we're back inside of our solution. Now, here's what's great. When I go back to my second tab that has me playing the application, if I refresh the application, if like, I accidentally got rid of that during the recording. Okay, no worries. So for those of you who have it open, just hit your refresh in the top left-hand corner. You'll see it refreshes the new stuff. For those of you that accidentally closed it out, that's okay. In your solution, if you click on apps and you click on your application, and then you come up here to hit the play button, you'll see the new version of it. All right, so if you accidentally close it out, not a big deal. Go to your solution, find the app, and then you can hit play from there. All right, so now that we have our new app open with all of our modifications, let's go on over and let's take a look back at our albums. So again, we see our view that we've modified. Let's make another record. Let's see if the form has come up here. So in the upper left-hand corner, we're going to click on New. And once we click on New, hey, there is our new form. So let's make another one, right? Let's have some fun here. So we'll call this the worst album of all time. And then we'll go to the recording artist. Now, this is our special column. In the tables that you imported with your solution, when I made recording artist, this is a lookup to the contact table. So what's going to happen is when I click inside here, it's going to show me, because it's a lookup, any recent contact records that I've been, interacting with. Now, I haven't been interacting with any at this point. So I can hit the enter key like so, and it's going to load them up. Or you can hit that magnifying glass over here on the right-hand side. And so I'm just going to say, Jim Glenn. And that's why I had you install that sample data. Now, for those of you that weren't able to install sample data, here's something you can do. You can use this feature called New Contact. Now, when you click on it, what this does is it opens up what's called a quick create form. Now, with your contacts and accounts table that comes pre-made for you in a Dataverse instance, they've already made the quick create form for you. Now, for your custom tables, you have to go and make them on your own and turn on a few different settings, which again, we do in our Building Solutions in Dataverse course in our boot camps as well. So for those of you who don't have any contacts, like I don't want to use somebody that's already here, feel free to hit that new contact. Just put in like a first name, last name. So I'll just put in here, Matt Peterson. Nobody would ever want me on an album. You don't need to fill in the rest of the information. Feel free to if you want to, but I'm going to hit save and close. And what just now happened is I've now made a new contact record on the contact table. And now I can use that as part of the lookup for my recording artist. Now, this is just one column that looks up to the contact table. In any future tables that you make, you can have lookups to the contact table as well. Now, my desired release date, I made this as a date column on your solution. So I'd gone up to new column, I put in desired release date, I chose the data type of date, and so that's what we're seeing here. So I'm just going to choose a release date here. Let's say we want to go with, we'll go in the future, the 17th, and then here's that new column that we made together, the genre column. This was our choice column. So what is Matt going to be? A folk, country, pop, or hip hop artist? I'm going to go with, I'll go with folk for right now. And I'm going to hit save and close. And now we see our new album that we've created. Now here's the other great thing. Matt, what about that earlier record we made? Can we go back and modify it now with this new form? You definitely can. So whenever you see these blue hyperlinks, this means it's going to take you to that record. So if I go back to my greatest album of all time, I can put in who the recording artist is. I won't go with Matt this time. I'll say it's going to be Nancy. I'll pick just a different release date. I'll pick a genre, and then I'll hit save and close. Just like so. So you can always go back and easily edit your records. Just as easy as to delete a record. If you want to delete one of your records, you can go into the record itself and hit the delete, but you can also just put nice little checks here and you can say delete, or you can deactivate it. What that would do is it keeps the record on your table, but it's now not what we call an active record. So let me show you how this works. So if I'm like, greatest album of all time, I need to keep the record, but it's not really important for showing it in my active albums, I can click deactivate. And when I click on deactivate, it's going to ask me, are you sure you want to do this? I'm going to say, yeah, I'm sure. I click on deactivate here, and notice what we don't see in this view. In this view, I no longer see that. Now, did it get rid of the record? It did not. How do you know, Matt, that it didn't get rid of the record? Well, up here at the top, I could go to the solution, click on tables, and see all of my records, but this is a view. And if you noticed up here at the top, there's a little drop down. And right now it defaults to the active albums view. Well, what if I want to see the inactive albums? Well, I hit the drop down. I say, go show me the inactive album. And notice it's right here because that's one of the other views that gets created for you. It's got a filter to only show your inactive records. And this is one of those that you could go and modify the inactive view if you ever wanted to. Now, if you have a record that you deactivated and you're like, what, now it does need to be part of, our active records, I can come right to the check mark and I can come up here and say, what, let me activate it again. And so I click on activate. You'll notice it's no longer in the inactive view, but if I come back up to the top and I say, show me my active albums, there it is. So some features that are built into your model-driven apps, which is what I really love as opposed to a Canvas app, don't have as much of the design freedom, but what we do have are pre-built features baked into it. All right, so now we've got 2 albums. Feel free to make more if you want to, but now I'm ready to start getting these proposals. All right, so I'm going to come on down to my album proposals page. And here's the new view that we made. Awesome. We don't see any data because we haven't made any proposals. So let's come up to the top and let's make a quick little proposal here. Now notice our proposal number is read only, so I can't go in and type anything in. That's what we wanted because Dataverse is going to auto number this column for me. So I'm going to choose, all right, well, which album are we giving a proposal for? Let's say it's the greatest album of all time. Producer, this is a lookup to our contact table. So I'm going to go and choose a producer. So typically, it's probably not going to be Matt because Matt's the artist. So I'll pick one of these other random ones. So I'll say Renee is. Record label. Well, record label is a lookup to the account table. So if I come on over here and click on my magnifying glass, I can choose one of my sample accounts. Now, if you're like, Matt, I don't have that sample stuff. Well, once again, you can come on down, click new account. You get that quick create form over here. And let's call it the, producer special. I don't know. Again, I'm not that creative, y'all. So producer special. Get rid of my caps here. So that's going to be the name of my account. And then I'll just hit save and close like so. I can add in that extra information. Credentials, 2 Grammy albums as of 2025. Hourly fee, let me spell albums right, that's going to bother me. And get rid of that A here. And I don't have my delete. Let me come back. There we go. And my hourly fee, let's say they're going to charge $95 an hour for that fee. And I'll say it's been submitted because I chose, when I made this choice column for you and your solution, I did put a default choice to always go to submitted. So I'll hit save and close here. And let's see what happens. Bingo, proposal 1000. So the auto numbering worked. I know what album the proposal's for, who is the producer assigned to it, what is going to be that fee, and what record label they're associated with, along with credentials, proposal status, and so on. So what I'm going to do at this point, because I want to show some other features, is I'm going to make 2 more records. So I'm going to do it a little bit quicker here. So feel free to come through. But one of the things I want to show is another feature of our model-driven apps. So for my next record, I want to do it for the same one. So greatest album of all time. I think that's what I did for the last one. Let me go back and make sure. Yep, greatest album of all time. So I'm going to choose that same one. Producer, I'm just going to pick a random one down here. Thomas, record label, I'll do a different one. Some sample data, sample, $50. And then I'm going to hit save and close again. I'm going to make one more. So I now have 2 for greatest album of all time. That's what I want to show another feature. I'm going to click new again in the upper left-hand corner. This one I want to do for my other album. And I called it worst album of all time. Producer, I'll just pick a quick one down here. We'll say it's Yvonne. Record label, I'll come down, say A-Datum Corporation, yada, yada, yada. Hourly fee, I'll say only $10 an hour. And I'll hit save and close. Now, why did I want to make these 3 different records? Because I want to show you some capabilities of your model-driven app. So as I mentioned, when you see a blue hyperlink, it will take you directly to that record in question, right? So I had clicked on like the record itself earlier. But even with these, because these are my lookup columns, I can go directly to that record. So if there's something I needed to add to the record label of producer special, which I didn't spell correctly, I can click on it right from here. It's going to take me to the form. Now this is going to be on the account table. So this form is way more built out because Dataverse makes it for you. Let's say I want to modify it to producer special, put in a phone number, whatever. I'm not going to do that, but I'm going to hit save and close. And once I hit save and close, you'll notice I'm going to hit continue anyway. They're saying, hey, there's some fields that are suggested you fill out. Are you sure you want to continue? I am, because I'm not going to fill out all of those. And I've updated that record. And I didn't have to do that by going back over to the accounts table and making the modification. I could do it directly from the hyperlink. Okay, that's pretty cool. Why did I have us make 2 different records for greatest album of all time? Well, here's the reason why. What I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to go to my greatest album of all time record. I could either do it from here, or I could go back to the albums table and click on it from here. It's really up to you. I'll do it from my album proposals. Click on my greatest album of all time. Okay, cool. That's it. I could go and modify it here if I wanted to, change the genre, change the desired release date, and so on. But here's what I want to show you get with model-driven apps. On every form that you create, all of your main forms that you have, if you hit the drop down on related, what that's going to do is show you any other tables that are related. Now, what does it mean related? It means they have a connection. There is some type of lookup column, not some type, there is a lookup column that is looking to this table. So there's a relationship. And on my album proposals, remember we had them pick the album that we wanted to attach the proposal to. Okay, well, because that's been done, if I want to see all of the proposals that have been made for the greatest album of all time, I can click on, hey, show me the album proposals. And notice what we see. We see 2 records. Even though there's 3 total proposals, there's only 2 that are related to just this specific record, the greatest album of all time. And that's what we call the associated view. Now, the associated view is pretty good. You know, it comes with your primary name column. It comes with the created on. If you were like, I want to see more information, well, what could you do? You could, we're not going to, but I'm going to show you where. I could go back to my solution. I could go to my album table or album proposal table. In this case, it would be my album proposals. And I could go to my views and I could modify the associated view. And I could add in the other columns that I want my users to see. So again, pre-built in your model-driven app. And what we're seeing is that it's really easy to go back and forth between your records. Now, here's another cool thing. On the associated view, I'm looking at it and I'm like, you know what? I just got another proposal in, or maybe I forgot to enter a proposal. I can click right here on new album proposal. You know, greatest album of all time, we did have another proposal. And it came from the producer. Again, just going to pick a random thing in here. We'll go with Susan. The record label, we'll just say it was AdventureWorks. Blah. Put in a fee. And I'll hit save and close. And now notice we now have 3 proposals. So it filled in a lot of that information for me. And if I go back to my album proposals, I should now have 4. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So the associated view is pretty cool. And we can modify it, but we can make it a little bit easier. Because sometimes users don't know when you make a model-driven app. They don't know that when they click on, for example, a record, greatest album of all time, that they can hit related and see all of the proposals. Or vice versa, if I went to click on, for example, let me come on over to my proposals. Let's say I go to the record label, A-Datum Corporation here in this instance. So that's going to take me to the account form. And if I hit related here, you'll also notice that I can go, hey, what are all the album proposals associated with this account? And I click on it, and I can see all the proposals that A-Datum Corporation has given us. So they have to kind of know to go there. But sometimes you want to make it, you know, a little bit quicker for them to see. So that's what we're going to show as part of our form modification. We're going to get into some subgrids, so a little bit more advanced here in our terms of our form modification. So what we want to do at this point is go do some more with our form. We're going to get into what are called quick views and also what are called our subgrids. All right, so let's start making some more modifications. What I think would be pretty cool is when we're on the album proposal table and we're going to make a new one, what would be awesome is that when we choose like the producer, if we see some information that we already have stored about that producer record. That is what we're going to be calling a quick view control that we put inside of our form. So that's the first thing that I want us to do here. It's the easiest one to do. And it's a typical question we get in a lot of our classes, like, how can I just see some of the information about that when I'm typing it in or choosing that record? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back on over into my solution here. And I want to modify on my album proposal table, I want to modify my form. So I'm going to find my main form. Again, mine is the second option here. Yours might be the third or the first. So I'm going to click on that information form. And we're going to open up our form designer, which again, we just did the nitty gritty. Just added our fields in and we were good to go. But now what I want to do is I want to make a separate section just about the producer itself. So over on the left-hand side, you've got the skinny little navigation panel here, or I like to call it the panel selector. And up at the top-ish area, you have this components area. And these are all the different types of components you can add into forms. You can separate them by tabs. You can put in different sections in your form, lots of things. But what we're going to add in here is we're going to add in a new one column section. So over in components, we're going to click one column section to add to our form. And we'll see that it puts it right here. Now this section is just called new section. I think I'm going to give it a different label because you can always change your labels using this properties panel on the right. If you're like, hey, I don't see my properties panel, well, you're probably going to see something like this. Just expand it out, just like so, and now you can see it here. And so I'm going to call this producer info. So this is going to be, when we pick our producer, we want to see some information about that person that we already have stored in our contacts table. So I'm going to call mine producer info. And then when I click outside of the box, we'll see that it changes here. Now in this section, I'm going to take this producer and I'm just going to drag and drop it in the section. So I'm just kind of breaking my form up. So when you have big forms with lots of fields, you can do different tabs if you want to break it up. You can put them into different logical sections. It's whatever you think makes the most sense for your users. So I've got it there, but it hasn't hit the point of what I'm really going for. So I'm going to add one more thing. So in this little section here called producer info, like how do you know you're on this section, Matt? Well, one, I see this purple outline around it. Two, over in the properties panel, it says you are on the producer info section. Three, I can come on over to the left-hand side, and if I go into what we call the tree view, you can see here that I've got the producer info section selected. So a few different ways to get there and to see what you have selected. So now in this producer info, I'm going to come up here to my components, and I'm going to add in what is called a quick view. So if you have it selected, you can just click on quick view. If you're more of the drag and drop kind of person, you can always drag and drop it to where you want it to be. So I want it to be right underneath producer. So I'm just going to drag and I'm going to drop it. And it says, hey, quick view. What is a quick view? Well, again, we talked about a quick view is to find that related information. So you can only do this on columns that are lookup columns on the table form that you're putting it into. So it's going to say, well, which one of your lookup columns do you want me to go and find? Do you want me to find it from the album? I don't really need the information about the album at this point. What I want to do is find the information about that producer. Okay. All right. So the producer was a lookup to the contact. So go and find me that contact. Now, once you find me that contact, I want to bring in some information about that person. So our column is going to be our producer because that's the lookup to our contact table. So I'm going to choose producer here. And it says, okay, that's the lookup to your contact table. Which quick view form would you like me to use? So on the contact table, they've already made the quick view forms for us. On your tables, your custom tables, that's where you go into your solution and you make a quick view form if you want to use it. So you go to the forms area, you're going to say new and then say quick view form, and then you add in the information you want. So for this one, I think I'm just going to go with this nice contact card here. Feel free later on, pick whichever one you want, but I'm going to go with the contact card. And then I'm just going to hit done here. So when I put that in, we'll give it a second. This is going to be fields from the contact table that is quick view forms. And if I don't like it, I can go modify it. I can remove it if I want to. So you know what? Maybe I don't like this quick view that I've chosen. I can come right here. I just hit my delete and it's gone. Or I could have hit the delete here. And then I could come back again and I can modify. So if you don't want it, you get rid of it. So simple, right? So if I want to go, you know what? I'm going to add the quick view back in. And this time I still want to go with my producer lookup column, but I want to use the account contact card. I can choose, or the contact quick form. I can choose either of these, and you can pick whatever you want to here. So I click on done, and now I've got a different quick view form that has been made for us. But again, you can see that all of these are read-only because they're just supposed to give us that related information. So I'm going to come up to the top. You can pick either one. You could keep the original one I did or put this new one in. It's up to you. And I'm going to hit save and publish. So I'm going to hit save and publish here. We're going to give it a second, and then I'm going to refresh our model-driven application. So this is just really nice when you are relating your record to one of those lookup records, and you want to see some information about that record that you're looking up to. So I'm going to come up here, back to my second tab. I'm going to do a refresh of my application. And then once I've done it, here we go. Here's my new form. So I'm just going to come up. I'll pick the greatest album of all time. I'll choose a record label, yada, whatever. You don't even have to fill out this information if you don't want to, because I didn't make these required columns. When you do make custom tables, you can choose if the columns are required or not required. So if you choose required, you have to fill out a value before you can save. If you keep it as optional, which is the default, then when you save the record, it doesn't matter if there's data in there or not. But now watch this. This is our new modification. When I go to find my producer, I'm not going to do Matt Peterson. Let me pick something that has some more data, some sample data. Let's say we're going to go with Patrick. Watch what happens. Now we can see the related information about Patrick. So it's not writing this data to the table, but it's just for my reference here. So quick view forms can be a kind of beneficial thing to make sure you're picking the right, lookup record there. And I'll just hit save and close. And now we've made a quick view form. Well, we didn't make the quick view form. We added the quick view inside of our form there. Another feature that's just built into your Dataverse model for your model-driven applications. Now let's go to the second point that I had. What if I'm on an album and I want to see all of the proposals that have come in from greatest album of all time, or whichever one we choose? Now, we learned that we could go look at the associated view, but can we make it a little bit better? You bet we can. So let's go over and do that next. So I know a lot of information being thrown at you in this session here. So that's, again, why you can always go back and rewatch. And to go deeper into it, that's where our other classes from our on-demand learning, as well as our private boot camps, public boot camps, we go much deeper into it. So here's what I want to do. I want to modify my album form. Or not the form. I want to modify that view there. So I'm going to come on over to album right here. So I'm going to click on my album. All right, so now we have the album created. And what I want to do is to add in a subgrid. So when I'm making a new record for an album, I want to see all the proposals that are currently for that album. Producer A, producer B, producer C, so on and so forth. So what we're going to modify here is the form itself. So when we go to pick our album, we will see all the related records for it. All right, so let's watch how this is done. So over on our form, on the albums table, which I'm going to click on, we're going to modify. So again, my main form on this one is my third one. So I'm going to modify my information main form. And then I'm going to add in that extra component. So over here in the upper left-hand corner, all right, I'm going to add in a different section and that nice, beautiful subgrid. So up here in the upper left, just so I can make a nice little, extra area, I'm going to first start by putting in that one column section. And I'm going to call this current proposals, something like this. I'm just going to change the name, or maybe just proposals, something along those lines. Now in this section, I'm going to add in what we call a subgrid. So I've got my proposal section selected. I'm going to choose to add a subgrid inside of it. And it says, okay, you want a subgrid. So once again, we're going to be dealing with our lookups, and it's going to say, well, where is this data coming from? Well, I want to see all of the current proposals for a specific album that we're currently on to make a new proposal. So up here at the top, I'm going to look. Hey, luckily, because I did a nice table with starting with an A, it's going to be right here. This is the album proposals table. So we're on the album table. This is saying I'm going to use the album proposals album relationship to bring back in all the records, not just one like a quick view, but all of them. So I'm going to choose my album proposals. And then I choose, well, which view do I want to show? So some people will make their own special view for these. We don't have that time. So we're just going to say, hey, just use our generic active album proposals that we already have. And then we're going to click on done here. And we're going to give it a second. Now, it gives us a really crazy name up here. It's called the new subgrid control number. I don't really care to see that. If you want it, keep it. I don't. So I'm going to come on over to the right-hand properties panel with this subgrid selected. And I'm going to say, just hide that label for me, please. All right, so we've hidden that label. And now let's save and publish what we've got for our subgrid control. And there's way more modifications you can make to subgrid controls as well. Different components you can add in, coloring and all of that. But again, I'll only get you for a little bit of time today. So we're just gonna go with that basic one here. We're gonna wait for it to save and publish. Give it a second here. And then we're gonna go back to our model-driven application, and then we're gonna refresh it, and we're gonna see what this new feature adds into the model-driven app. So it's just taking its sweet time. There it goes, saved and published. So we're gonna go back to our application. We're going to do a refresh of our application here. And we're going to come on over, give it a few seconds here, and boom, albums. So now, I wish it didn't show it right away, but let's pretend it didn't show right away. So if I'm on the albums table here, right, and I go to the worst album of all time, and I click on it, now what am I seeing? I'm seeing basically that associated view, but my users don't have to know to come up to related and click on show me the related album proposals. We've automatically added it into the form for them. So when they're looking and then they realize, hey, there is a new album proposal, well, right here, they've already got that ability. They can click on new album proposal. So currently there's only one here. I click on new album proposal. I'll come on in here. I'll choose a record label, producer special, blah, 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 blah. I'll put in a fee, $3. Here we go. Here's my quick view. I'll pick my producer, and I'm not going to pick Matt because I didn't put in all that information about Matt. Let's say it is Paul this time. So I see that quick view. So again, the big difference, it took me a while to, I'm sure y'all are smarter than me. A quick view is only going to retrieve that one lookup record and show the details about that record. The subgrid that we just did is going to show all the related records about it. So it's going to show the children in data terms for it. So this is our quick view. Found it, shown it to you. I'm going to hit save and close here. And now when I go back to the worst album of all time, now my subgrid, which is going to say, I'm going to show all the records associated with this record in question, which we would call technically our parent record. So a pretty neat feature, a lot more things you can do with subgrid functionality and adding to it, but I think we're starting to hit the mark. And hopefully you're seeing that model-driven apps have we harmed a single formula in this creation? We have not. And that's why I love model-driven applications. All of the interaction, all of the features are really built in. Just got to know what you want to add into it. So speaking of what we want to add into it, let's take a look at something else here. So let's go to album proposals. Now, again, I could click on new album proposal from here, but let's, go from the scratch here. I'm going to go to album proposal. Let's say I've got a new one. And at the moment in time, we know what album it's going to be for. So I'm just going to pick one of these. But I don't know who the producer is going to be yet. I know it's going to come from a specific record label. So they've called me up. Matt, we think we can help you out with this. So Alpine Ski House calls me up, says, hey, we're going to be able to produce for you. But I don't know yet who your producer is going to be. We don't know what time frames we've got. And if I don't know who the producer is there really a need for me to put in the credentials? Maybe credentials of the company, and that would be fine. But if I was more specific, like this is the credentials of the producer, then there's no need for me to fill it out. Or maybe the hourly fee. If the hourly fee is tied to the producer, I don't need to fill it out yet. Well, part of making applications, whether it's model-driven apps or Canvas apps, is to guide the user to filling out only the information that they need to fill in. So what my goal here next is to control the form of saying, hey, if you got a producer, then yes, we need to put in their credentials and we need to put in their hourly fee. But if not, it's not required. Now, in this case, I would probably do it for both the credentials and the hourly fee. Let's just focus on one just to save us time, because you just kind of repeat the steps that we're about to do. This is what we call a business rule. It's server-side logic that Dataverse is going to handle for us based on certain conditions that we want to apply. So here's our big idea. So I gave you a big broad overview, but for what we're going to do is we're going to say if the producer, we have not put in a producer, so we haven't put in a value for this field, we are going to hide the hourly fee. If the producer we do know, we're going to show the hourly fee and we're going to make it required in our form. Because right now I can save my record without putting in an hourly fee. And just to prove it to you, I'm just going to hit save here. Notice how I was able to save even without an hourly fee. So if I hit my back arrow, I can see this new proposal, no hourly fee. But I'm going to say, you know what? When I made the column, I made it optional, but for a specific instance, I want to make it required, and I want to hide and show it based on a certain condition. And that's where we're going to go next. So I'm just going to delete this record because I don't like it for it to not all be filled out. And we're going to make what is called a business rule. So we're going to go back to our first tab. I'm still in the form designer. I'm going to close out of my form designer to get back into my solution. All right, so now that we're back in our solution, whenever you make a business rule, you want to put it on the table in question. So in this case, it's going to be our album proposal table. So I'm going to click on my album proposal table, and you'll notice over on the far right-hand side, you've got these business rules under the customization window. So we're going to click on business rules here. And we don't have any because we haven't made any, but that's about to change. So in our upper left-hand corner, we're going to click on New Business Rule. And again, the whole idea of a business rule is we want to control some operations of our table itself. So once this loads up here, it's going to look very different from anything that we've seen up until this point. This is called your Business Rule Designer. And every business rule has a name at the top. It's just New Business Rule by default. If you hit your drop-down arrow, you can give it a better name. So I'm going to call this my producer hourly fee rule. You can even add in a description if you ever wanted to. I'm not going to take the time to put in what the description is because we're about to do it. And I'm just going to collapse this so I don't see it. Now you're like, wait, did you change the name? I did. We won't see that name up here until we hit save, but we can't hit save yet until we actually do something with it. But it is going to be there. So every business rule starts off with a condition. So I've clicked on that condition box here. And the names that you give these over on the right, these are just for your reference purposes. Your users don't see this. So our condition is really, do we have a producer? So I'm going to type that in. I mean, that's logical, right? Do we have a producer? Now, what I want to check is on my album proposal table. Now you see the word entity. Whenever you see the word entity, it means table. This is the old language of it using the classic version. So when you see the word entity, it means table. When you see the word field, it means column. So just, you got to kind of know the different naming conventions there. So what field do I want to check? Well, I want to check my producer field, my producer column. And what I want to do for the operator here is I don't want to say, does it equal a certain person? And you can see there's a lot of different things to choose from. I just want to go with, does it contain data? So contains data is going to be my operator here. So what this is going to do is if we have a producer in the producer field, so it contains data, then it's going to go and do everything I tell it to do, what we call the true branch. If it doesn't, it's going to come down here and do what we put in the false branch. So here's the big thing. Here's the big thing. Here's the big thing. Always hit apply when you are done in the properties field. You will be so upset with yourself when you click away and do something different. It did not keep what you've done here in the properties panel. So the apply is really important. So now that I've hit apply, what I'm going to put over here is the next part. So if it contains data, I'm going to come over here to my components and start to make out my rule. So I'm going to come on over to this set visibility, and I'm just going to drag and drop it where I want it to go. So I want it to go right here. Boom. Now, if you don't like dragging and dropping, you can click the add in the upper left to say what type of rule that you're adding into it. I like dragging and dropping better. So for my set visibility, I'm going to say, you know what? Show hourly fee. Again, your users don't see it. This is more for your reference point. So now it's going to say, well, what do you want to, what's the visibility? Which field? Well, it is going to be my hourly fee. And I want the visibility to be set to yes. And then I hit apply. And now you'll notice down here in the bottom right that you're going to get a word representation of what you are writing. So if producer contains data, show field hourly fee. Beautiful. Now I want the exact opposite. If it's not containing data, I don't want to show the hourly fee field. So what I can do here is I could go to components, drag it over again, but just so you know, you can come up to the top when you want to reuse a action, but maybe you want to modify it or just reuse it altogether. You can hit copy. And then after you copy, when you hit paste, it's going to say, well, where do you want to paste it? So I'm going to put it in my no branch. So if it does not contain data, I'm going to use that same visibility option. I'm going to put it here, but obviously I'm going to make a modification. I'm going to call it, instead of the display name of show, I'm going to call it hide hourly fee. In the visibility, I'm going to set it to no. And then once again, we can't forget to hit apply. And this is beautiful. So if contains data, show. If not, the else, then hide. I'm loving it. Now, the last requirement I wanted is if we put the producer, I want to show that hourly fee, but I also want to make it required. You cannot save the record until we know how much they're going to charge us. We've got that for the proposal. And again, every data set's going to be different. Your use case will always be different, but I want to show you there's other rules that we can use. So let's come on over. Let's go to our components, and we are going to go to the set business required. And I'm going to drag and drop it. Now, because I said you could do it another way, I'll show you the other way. If you don't want to drag and drop, you can click on add. You can go click on add set business required at this point, and then you choose where does it need to go. So I'm just going to put it in my true branch right here, and I'm going to change the name of hourly required. So hourly fee required, if I can spell it correctly today. And what column do I now want to make required? My hourly fee. And I want to make it required. So I change it to business required. This is also, if you ever made a column that was a required column, a business rule could override that to say, well, in this instance, we're not going to require it when you want to save your record. And then once again, I'm going to hit apply. So now I can see my language here. So producer contains data, show the hourly fee, make it required. If it doesn't contain data, then I'm going to hide the hourly fee. Now you might say, Matt, should you go do the business required down here and make it not required? I don't have to, because this column, when it was created, the default is it's not required. So once I have that done, I'm going to come up to the top right. I'm going to save my business rule. It's going to go through its processing thing, make sure there's no errors here. And now this will be applied to my table in question. Now, hopefully it's being applied. So I've saved it. Now, the last thing to not forget about is you got to activate it. So you've saved your rule, but it's technically not going to be used until you click activate. So I'm going to click on activate. So this is great when you're just developing, you're making a rule, but you're not done with it yet. It's the end of your workday. You're going to come back to it tomorrow. So you can keep saving. It won't be officially implemented into your table until you click activate. So I'm going to click on activate here. We get that old progress bar. Reminds me back when I first got, at least at my house, when I first got a computer back in the 2000s. All right, so I've activated it. So now that it's active, I'm going to close out of here. All right, it says, are you done with your rule? Yes, I'm done. And now we see the new rule and it's currently on. Now, does it work? Great question. Let's go back to our model-driven application and let's refresh our application. So I've refreshed it. I'm going to click on new. Moment of truth. Click on new. Hey, yo, look at what we don't have. We don't have the hourly fee in right now. So I can make a new record and just do it. I'll just put in a random whatever. I'll hit save and close because it's not required of hourly fee. I should be able to save and close it, even though I didn't even hook it up into an album. So I hit save and close. It's there. It's a bad piece of data. I'm just going to leave it for the time being. I'm going to make a new proposal. But this time, and this one I will do. So I'll go worst album of all time. I'll choose that record label, credentials, whatever. And now when I go to producer, I'm going to choose, let me pick a different producer here. Who haven't we used? I can't even remember who we didn't use in this session. We'll go with Thomas. Oh, look at that. Hourly fee now shows up because a producer, that field contains data. If I were to try to save right now, we're going to get a message. Hourly fee is required. It must be filled in because that is part of our business rule. So we get the message, go, okay, I forgot. Hourly fee is $95. $95. Now when I hit save, bingo. So now I've got that business rule doing that hiding and showing and making certain fields required or not required. A lot more you can do with business rules. Once again, in our Building Solutions and Dataverse course, we go much deeper into the other types of rules that are there for set visibility, business required, business recommendations that we want to add to users, lock, unlock. We've got a lot there. But hopefully you're getting a good preview of what you can do with the business rule. So now that we have our business rule done, what happens when you make your app and it's looking good, but maybe you all don't like how I've got it set up over here on the left-hand side. Contacts, accounts, albums, album proposals. Because, hey, I made this app. I didn't make it for you, but that's our starting app, right? Maybe you want it to look a little bit different on that navigation panel. Okay, well, let's see how easy it is to do. So I'm going to come on over here, back to my solution, and I'm going to go back to my apps area. And instead of playing the app, which we already have open, I just want to open up the app designer. So I'm just going to click on the name of the app itself. I'm just going to open up the app designer here. And you can see that in our pages panel, this is giving us a list of all the stuff that we have added in. And by stuff, I mean the 4 different tables that we have added in. And what if I want to maybe group these differently, or maybe I don't like the name? So like contacts, in this case, yes, we're using the contacts table, but I'm going to be referring to them as producers. Okay, no big deal. If I come on over here and click on the contacts or the contacts view from here, if I go over to the right hand side and I click on the settings, this is where I can change the title. It's not changing the name of the table, it's just changing the way that it's going to be shown in the application. So maybe I want to call this producers. And I click away and now it's called producers. And, accounts. I'm really kind of referring to them as my record labels. So instead of accounts, I click on accounts from here or the accounts view, and I go over to the settings and I can change this to record labels. And click away and we see it changed. Okay, pretty easy to get that done. Now, what if I want to kind of group them differently? Well, right now they're just under one big grouping area. So maybe I want to put producers and record labels as one area and albums and proposals as a different area in the application. Well, up here at the top, when we see this word new group, when we're in our pages area, if you click the three dots next to it, you can add in a brand new group. So I'm going to add in a new group here. Now, I don't see it. And the reason I don't see it is because there's nothing underneath of it. So it's going to be hidden by default. Well, I want my group to kind of go up here. Well, over here, I hit these three dots. And I say I want to move it up. Bingo. So I move it up. And now it's at the top here. But again, there's nothing under it. So we're not seeing it here. So what I can do, and there's lots of different ways. Maybe I'm going to put producers and record labels in this group at the top. So I'm going to hit the three dots next to my producers. I'm going to move it up. Boom. Ah, there it is. Now I see new group. I'm going to take my record labels. I'm going to move it up. Boom. Now I see it. So new group, new group. So we just move things in order that we want them to be seen. But maybe I don't like the name of new group. Okay. When I have new group selected over here in my navigation panel, I can go to the title and I can call this something like, what are we at? Producers and labels. And typically you do this is like sectioning. It's like making folders that you would use in your file explorer to organize. We're just trying to organize this for them. So for over here, instead of this group, maybe I call it albums and proposals. Just to make it a little bit easier to navigate there. So once we have that done, again, I would need to come up to the top here and I would need to, so if I just save, so again, if I just hit the save icon, it's going to save my changes in the designer, but it's not going to be used in the app yet. When you're ready to push out the changes you've made in your designer so that when we share this app, which we're going to be getting into in a second, that the other users see it, you do have to click your publish. Now, technically the publish is also, it says, I'm going to save what you got and I'm going to publish those changes out. So a few little modifications that you can make to the navigation pane. All right, so it's looking pretty good. Now, you've made an app and you want to start to share it with other users. What goes into that? So what we're about to get into, if you decide you do want to share it with someone else at your company, go for it. Again, this could just be the show and tell part here. But the key thing to remember, if I forgot to mention it earlier in the session here, is that when you make a model-driven app, just like a Canvas app, you can only share it with users at your organization who have a PowerApps license at that level. So with the model-driven app, to use Dataverse, you have to have a premium license. And that allows you to create your model-driven apps and then share those model-driven apps. Now, once you share it, that user that you share with at your organization also needs a premium license. So if I were to make this app and then, because I got premium licensing, and I want to share it with, let's say I want to share it with Timothy. But Timothy doesn't have a premium license. He only has the PowerApps for Office 365. Timothy will not be able to use my application. So with a model-driven app, I know, I'm sorry to tell you this, you have to have the premium license in order to share, and the user you share it with at your org also has to have the premium license. So let's get into sharing, because this is a really important part about Dataverse as well, not just for model-driven apps, but for Canvas apps. Sometimes you're going to have data that you want to expose to your users you share with, but you don't want them to see all of the data, and you only want them to see some of it, or you don't want them to delete, but you want them to create or edit or whatever. Well, this is where we create what are called security roles. So what we're going to do in this last little bit of our session here today, I wish we had more time, we're going to show how to make a security role and then also how to share the application. So let's see how we can get that done next. All right, so now what we're going to do is do the sharing of our app and security settings. So let's just do this. Let's close out. We're done with the model-driven app designer here. So I'm going to hit back to go back into my solution. And here's what's great about Dataverse is we can control what data the users have access to. meaning what records do we want to show them? Are we going to allow them to create records, edit records, delete records, filtering the records down, all of that good stuff. So, and this is going to apply both to your Canvas apps, your model-driven apps, even comes in with Power Automate flows as well. So when we share anything that's going to be utilizing Dataverse or any program using Dataverse here that I mentioned, we want to make what's called a security role. Now, what the security role is going to do is control all those things. Now, the role that everyone is going to need to use your application is is what we call the basic user role. And what I like to do, and you'll see why as we move forward, is I don't like to recreate the basic user role. What I like to do is start with the basic user role that comes with Dataverse and then add in the extra security privileges to it. So some people will go into their solution and they'll make a new security role and they'll just make what they need it to be. But for me, I just know what I think is a little bit quicker. What I like to do is I like to start with the basic user role and add those extra privileges. So the way that we can do that is if you go to your settings, and again, you don't have to do this part here because you might not want to share your app or make these new roles in a environment that you really have at your organization. But if you click on settings and you go to your admin center, all right, so I'm gonna go to my admin center here, and then we're going to go to the left, or I'm going to go to the left and click on my environments. And I'm going to go to my Learn with the Nerd environment here. And then over on the right, we're going to see security roles. And so I can see all the roles here. So if I come on over and I go see all the roles, I'll give it a second to load up. We're going to see all the roles that are going to be part of this environment. Now up here at the top, it says display only parent security roles. I'm going to turn this feature off. So this way I can see all the roles. It was just trying to show me any that had like related privileges to it. And I'm going to go on down and find my basic user role. So the basic user role is what we're going to want to give all of our app users. But I want to add more to that role. And it'll make a little bit more sense later. You might be like, why not just make a separate role? I promise it'll make sense in just a few moments. So I'm going to take this basic user role. We'll talk a little bit more here what this all means. And I'm going to copy this role out. So I'm going to copy out this security role. And I'm going to give it a different name. I'm going to call this my Learn with the Nerd album role. Album producer role. And I'm just going to hit copy here. So it's going to copy out all these current privileges, which comes with the basic user. And then I'm going to start to add in my specific custom tables that I want to be done. So what you'll notice is that once I copy it, it still keeps me on the basic user role. I don't want to modify this. So I'm going to come back over here to my security roles so I can go find that extra one. So I'm going to search up here because I don't feel like scrolling. My Learn with the Nerd one. And I'm going to click on it from right here. And now I'm going to start to add in. Now, we're not going to mess with the basic user roles here. So what I want to do is go and put in some roles for my album table and for my album proposal table. So up here at the top where it says show only assigned tables, you can see that those tables there's been nothing assigned to them. But if I come up here and say show all tables or only unassigned, either way, I'll go with unassigned here. I will come on down. I'm not going to go look for it. I'm going to search for it. I'm going to look for my album table. And what you're seeing here, I'll remove this, is right now the album table. If I were to share my app and give them only the basic user, you could see that for both album and album proposal, they can't do anything with the data. There is no access to it. They don't have create, read, write, delete, none of these privileges. So if I want them to, who I share this with, if I want them to be able to create the album in question, then I would come up here and click where it says none. And I say, okay, what type of privilege am I going to give you? So if I go with user, then that means they can create. So I'll go user, you can create, records on this table. For read privileges, if I choose user here again, they could only read the album records that they have created. They couldn't. So if I share it with, I share it with John, I share it with Helen. If Helen makes an album record, John cannot see Helen's album record. If I want to give it even further, like if I want to go like full access, I say organization. So everybody can read everyone else's records on the album table and so on. And then you can also go into making business units if you want to. So you have a unit where maybe I put Helen and John in a unit so they can now see each other's records. And we can even have parent-child. So I can put Helen and John in like the manager unit, and I can make another business unit, which is for, Nate. And then we can do parent-child business. So now we could see the ones that are prior, the ones that are above that. Again, not going into that today. We do that in our regular on-demand learning building solutions and Dataverse course. So what I'm going to do for all of these is I'm just going to make them all user. So I'm just going to come on down here, user. I'm not actually going to share it with anyone, but this is where you go to make all the different privileges of what you want to assign. And then once you are happy with the privileges that you are assigning to these tables, and again, I'm not going to officially share it, so to save time, I'm not going to go and change all of them. Once we are done with that, I'm going to save and I'm going to close. All right, so you go into each of those different rights for that table. Is it user? Is it organization? Is it for the business unit the person is part of? Are we going to do parent-child business unit and so on? So now I've made a role. Okay, that's cool. The role is made. It's not applying to anything at this point in time. But now I'm ready to share my application. All right. So once I'm done with modifying my security roles, I'm going to close out of that. I'm now ready to share my application. Well, what I do is I put a little check mark. I don't know if it's little. I put a check mark next to my application. And then right up here, I click on share. So when I click on share here, it says, okay, you want to share your app. Who would you like to share it with? Well, I'll pick that I want to share it with, I don't know, Jonathan. So I'll come on over here and share it with Jonathan. So now it says there's a new person you're about to share it with, Jonathan Silva. Say, cool. And you think you're done. But if I click share right now, nothing is going to happen. I'll give Jonathan the link to the model-driven application. It will say you do not have the rights to open it up because nothing has been attached to Jonathan. I said, hey, I want to share this with you, but I haven't given him technically the security role or the keys to the kingdom. So I would come over here to Jonathan and put a check, and now I choose which role to assign him. Now, right now, there's only two roles, system administrator and system customizer. And I don't want to give him those big, broad roles of my environment. I want to give him that learn with the nerds role. Okay, well then how do I do that? Because I don't see it right here. So this is one of the other little things just you got to remember. So what I do is I have to come to my application itself. And on the app, once I put a check mark and I come on over, this is where I can choose a new role that is going to be applied to this application, a security role that I'm allowed to use. So the one that I want to use is my Learn with the Nerd album producer role. So I'm going to say, hey, for this application, the Learn with the Nerd album producer role is going to apply to it. Okay, great. So I'm going to put that check here, and then I'm just going to close off to the side. All right, so now I should see it. Learn with the Nerd album producer role. Beautiful, I see it. Now, when I come over to Jonathan and I hit the assign a security role, now I can give him that Learn with the Nerd album producer role. So now when I hit share, now I would hit share. And you know what? I can hit share here at this point. So I'll share it with him. Give it a second to load. And now Jonathan can use my application. And he's now a current user of it. So I give him the link to the application, which is just right up here. So I give him this link, and now he can go in and play the application. So the reason I don't like to use just the basic user role is if I put the basic user role, if I were to add the basic user role, Let me see if I can find it in here. It's somewhere down there. If I were to apply that basic user role, what that means is anyone that I add to my environment down the road and I give them the basic user role, now they technically are being shared. The app is automatically kind of shared with them. So that's why I like to make my separate role. I clone that basic user, make my little modifications to it, my custom tables, and then I individually give it to my users. So we did a lot here in the time that we had with model-driven apps. Again, a whole lot more that you can do with it. We've been monitoring the chat and getting questions, which we'll be answering at the end of our session. Hopefully we can give you some more insight into those questions that you do have. And if you're wanting to go deeper, again, we have on-demand learning courses that are devoted just to model-driven apps, taking you deeper into your Dataverse. If you want more of a live training, we have those as well. We even have a boot camp that is a 2-day devoted boot camp just to model-driven apps. So think about everything that we covered just in this time frame. Think about how much we could cover in 2 days together, making a model-driven app from beginning to end. So I hope you enjoyed. I really appreciate you for taking the time out of your day to be here with us. Again, the session has been recorded. You can always go back and rewatch. We'd love to have in your comments of the video of other things that you would like to see in our Learn with the Nerds session, so that we can help you, continue your journey with all the Power Platform and some of the other Microsoft products as well. So again, thanks so much for joining, and I hope to see you somewhere down the road.